Hi, I'm here in India, and I'm at the Biodynamic Farm of Dr. Vandana Shiva. She is the world leader in saving seeds, and I'm going to interview her now. So exciting.
So, my interest is in the health impact on GMO, and I know that there's a big increase in pesticide use, and I'm just wondering what you can tell mothers to look for when they're shopping in terms of what ingredients to pay attention to.
Well, we know that soya and corn are by and large totally genetically modified. So avoid those foods unless you can guarantee that the soya supply or the corn supply comes from an organic farmer you know. Unfortunately, the soya industry has made sure all foods have ingredients of from soya. 95% foods, processed foods, have ingredients.
Foods, right.
And therefore avoid processed foods. Mm-hmm. You know, eat foods in their natural form, eat foods as close to someone else's. Eat foods as close to where they're grown in time and in space.
Right. Now, is there any research that's been going on about the health impacts on, say, animals, cattle, and dairy products? And
of GMOs? There's
yes.
Huge research that has been done. Mm-hmm. Even though the industry has tried to silence the research by putting in place immediately after the biosafety negotiations were completed, and we were very successful in putting in the Convention on Biological Diversity an article called 19.3, which required governments to test GMOs for safety and the impact on biodiversity. And immediately the US GM lobby organized the US government to shut this down, and a principle was adopted called substantial equivalence. Pretend that a natural food and a GMO is equivalent, therefore don't look for the difference and don't find the difference and then declare this is safe. So in the US there's been as good as no research done through public institutions. But Europe is a different situation. In 98 already, the UK government had commissioned a study on GM potatoes. And Dr. Arpat Putsai, the world's top lectin expert, had done the work. And what his research showed was that the rats, their brain had shrunk, their pancreas had expanded, and their immunity had been eroded. And in the intestine of the rats, the GM-fed rats over the 3-month study had a lot of inflammation, which are preconditions of cancer. Mm-hmm. And of course, they do a very sustained study, so you can literally see the lesions, you can see the inflammation. A Russian Academy of Science study by Dr. Irina Ernikova, where she says fed GM soya to rats versus normal soya, and 2 impacts were very clear. First, there was very high rates of mortality, the offspring died, and those that survived had very high rates of mammalian cancer. Dr. Seralini, who did the first 2-year study, it's never been done before, 2-year animal feeding studies, and his study came out last year, and it showed very high levels of cancer in the rats. First, Monsanto attacked him and said he used the wrong rats, and he showed they'd used exactly the same rats for their study. Then they said the sample wasn't big enough, and he showed the samples used in all studies is the same sample. They tried everything under the sun to discredit him. And that is part of the crisis we face, that independent science and independent knowledge is showing that there is harm. The corporate interest of Monsanto, and it is at this point one player, sadly. Yes. There aren't too many players in this field. It's one company, Monsanto. They don't want people to know what's in the food, and they don't want people to choose, which is why the big Californian vote issue with $40 million poured in.
Proposition 37, I worked on that campaign,
yeah,
and it failed.
It failed only because of the corruption of the vote through money. Mm-hmm. Now they go and put a Monsanto protection clause. If it's all so safe, why are they worried about studies and rulings? Mm-hmm. If they're so confident it's all going to be good, why do they want to create undemocratic immunity by corrupting lawmaking? Yes. They aren't supposed to be the lawmakers. They're the ones who put the patenting of life clause into WTO, and that single clause is the reason I do seed saving. That's the reason I started Navdanya. So what we're really seeing is the ultimate in making us ignorant, the ultimate in making us lose our freedom, and the ultimate in imposing hazardous food on us. And, you know, people have rebelled when freedom of speech was taken away. Now what's being taken away is our freedom to eat right, the freedom to live and to eat healthy. And that is the ultimate freedom.
That's true.
You know, you can live without talking,
Right, you can't live without eating.
and you can't live on bad food because sooner or later it's going to kill you.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, I'm working with a pediatrician in America,
Yeah.
and she's finding that she has so many children coming in with gut issues, diarrhea, tummy upset, and all that. And when she takes them off GM food, they heal immediately.
So if you connect this back to that first study of Arpat Putsai, of irritation. After all that inflammation is leading to irritation. Irritation is what leads to diarrhea.
Yes.
The rats were telling us this in 1998. But instead of listening to the rats and to Arpad Putsai, they made sure Arpad was removed from his position. And he went back to Hungary, as he said. We gave him a Gandhi Award because of his bravery and his work. They first put a censorship on him and said, you can't talk about your research. He locked his lab. So he couldn't inform the public. Then we did a campaign to remove the gag order through the parliament in UK. He was allowed to speak. But they made sure that his credibility as a scientist was so badly damaged. And someone like him who lives just for his science, he said, I left Hungary for freedom because communism didn't give me freedom. But I'm going back to Hungary because communist Hungary gave me more freedom than corporate government. Best. And that's what we are seeing.
Now, in your opinion, do you think it's possible to eliminate GM crops from the planet with what's going on with Monsanto and the rest?
I think it's necessary. And if we decide it's necessary, it'll become possible. It totally now depends on citizen will. It depends on citizen persistence, and it depends on connecting the dots. You know, we didn't think the seed issue was relevant to the GMO issue, but it is. If you don't have non-GM seed, how will you grow the non-GM food? Which is why we started saving seeds here. Good seed gives you good food. We have thought organic is a luxury, but in a time of force feeding of GMOs, organic has become life-saving. It's not a luxury. And so if we start to connect all these dots, not just in terms of the different aspects of the food system, but also connect the dots across the world, which is why we've created a seed freedom campaign. Said everyone should know. So I was in Mexico 2 weeks ago to help the Mexican peasants fight GM corn, which Monsanto wants to impose on 2 million hectares at one go, in the heart of corn diversity. So it is crazy, and we are being ruled by, as many of us think, by psychopaths. And it is as if a murderer was out on the street shooting anyone that comes their way, the kind of man who shot children in the Connecticut school or the earlier Columbine. It's that kind of thing happening on a planetary scale. They don't have a physical gun in their hands, but they have a gene gun.
Yes, that's right.
And they're doing the same thing.
And last question, do you have any advice for Americans, like what we can do?
I think the Americans were made to believe they were living in a democracy, but their fundamental democracy about the freedom to eat right was being snatched from them. And I think after Proposition 37, after the fact that a farmer Bowman who buys seed 3 lines down the road from an elevator, and he's told even that is ours by Monsanto, if you look at all of that, I think a new independence movement needs to be born in the United States. And this new independence movement is not from British rule, it is from corporate rule, particularly Monsanto rule. And I think if we do it together, we can see a Monsanto-free world and a GMO-free world.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So I've been speaking to Dr. Vandana Shiva, and she is a world leader in saving seeds. And I'm very grateful to you today.
Thank you. Thank you.